I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this. You hear about it happening to other people. Some poor soul walking in on his wife tangled up with another man, his entire world shattering in an instant. But that kind of thing doesn't happen to you, right? Well, it happened to me. And the man in my bed? My so-called best friend. Let me back up. My name's Jake, and for 6 years, I thought I had a solid marriage with Olivia. We had our routines, date nights, weekend getaways, inside jokes that only we understood. Sure, the spark had dimmed a little over time, but that was normal, wasn't it? I never imagined she'd be the type to cheat. And Nick, he wasn't just a friend. He was family. We'd been inseparable since college, shared everything, had each other's backs. He was the best man at my wedding, and I was supposed to be his. Hell, I even helped him pick out an engagement ring for his fiancée Lauren. So when I came home early from work that day, I had no reason to suspect anything. I'd taken a half-day off to surprise Olivia with lunch, picked up sushi from her favorite place, and pulled into the driveway, completely unaware that my life was about to implode. The first sign that something was off came the moment I stepped inside. A faint murmur drifted down from upstairs, followed by laughter, Olivia's laugh. My grip tightened around the takeout bag, unease creeping up my spine. Maybe she was on the phone. Maybe the TV was on. That's what I told myself. And then I heard his voice. Nix. Something inside me cracked. My body moved on autopilot, step by step up the stairs, my pulse hammering in my ears. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar. I didn't need to push it open. I saw everything. Olivia and Nick, tangled together in the sheets of my bed. For a moment, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. It felt like I had stepped outside of my own body, watching a scene from some cruel movie where the protagonist's world comes crashing down. But this wasn't a movie. This was my life. Nick was the first to see me. His face drained of color, mouth opening and closing as if scrambling for words. An excuse, an apology, something. Olivia gasped, yanking the sheets up to cover herself, her expression frozen between guilt and panic. I didn't wait for explanations. I didn't need them. Without a word, I turned and walked out. They called after me, voices desperate, but I was already gone. I got into my car, tossed the sushi onto the passenger seat, and gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anger, humiliation, and betrayal twisted together inside me, forming something cold and sharp. I could have fought him. I could have screamed at her. But I didn't. Because I had a better idea. I drove for hours, not because I didn't have anywhere to go, but because I needed time to think. If I went back to that house, I might do something I'd regret. If I called them, I'd hear their pathetic excuses, their hollow apologies. I wasn't interested in either. Eventually, I found myself parked at an empty beach, watching the waves crash against the shore as my rage settled into something far more dangerous, calculated revenge. I didn't just want to leave Olivia. I didn't just want to cut Nick out of my life. They deserved worse. And then it hit me. Lauren. Nick's fiancée. The woman he was supposed to marry in 3 months. The woman who had no idea that the man she trusted was rolling around in my bed with my wife. I pulled out my phone, my heart pounding. Lauren and I weren't particularly close, but we'd spent enough time together over the years. She was kind, smart, and honestly, way too good for Nick. I scrolled through my contacts, found her number, and hesitated. Was this the right move? Then I remembered Olivia's laugh in my bedroom. The way Nick had looked at me, guilty but not sorry. I pressed call. Lauren answered on the second ring. Hey Jake. What's up? Straight to the point. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady. It's about Nick. Silence. Then cautiously, what about him? Meet me at the Oak Room in an hour. She didn't ask questions, didn't push for details. Just said, okay? That told me everything I needed to know. When she arrived, she looked tense, bracing for whatever I was about to tell her. I hated being the one to confirm her worst fears, but she deserved the truth. So I gave it to her. At first, she just sat there, hands clenched into fists on the table, staring at me. Then her eyes glistened. You're sure? She whispered. I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures I'd taken before walking out. Nick and Olivia, too lost in their betrayal to even notice me snapping proof. That's when the tears started, but not the kind I expected. Lauren didn't break down. She didn't sob. Instead, she seethed. That bastard, she muttered, wiping her eyes. And that lying witch. Then she looked up at me, fire in her eyes. What are you going to do? I smirked. I was hoping you'd help me. Her brow lifted. Help you how? I leaned forward. Nick's been bragging for months about taking you to that luxury resort in Aruba for your engagement trip, right? She nodded, wary but intrigued. Well, I said, how would you like to still go, just with me instead? Her lips parted slightly, then curved into a slow, wicked smile. I like the way you think, Jake. Lauren didn't even hesitate. The moment I suggested taking their dream trip together, she was all in. And honestly, I respected the hell out of that. She wasn't the type to waste time crying over a man who didn't deserve her. She wanted payback just as much as I did. Nick had already booked the trip, a week at a 5-star beachfront resort, a private villa, VIP treatment. Since Lauren's name was on the reservation, she had full control. All I have to do is swap his name for yours, she said, smirking as she scrolled through the reservation details. Poetic, isn't it? I grinned. Very. 10 minutes later, Nick was erased. My name was on the guest list instead. But we weren't stopping there. Lauren glanced up at me, eyes gleaming. How do you feel about making this very public? I chuckled. You mean rubbing it in their faces? Exactly, she said. They've been sneaking around in secret. I say we do the opposite. Let's make sure they see exactly what they lost. I leaned back, grinning. Lauren, I think I like your style. 3 days later, we were on a plane to Aruba, sipping champagne in first class, taking pictures, clinking glasses, smiling at each other, looking just close enough to raise eyebrows. By the time we landed, our phones were already blowing up. Lauren scrolled through her notifications, grinning. Well, Nick definitely saw the pictures. I glanced at her screen. His messages were unhinged. Nick, what the hell, Lauren? Nick, you took Jake on our trip? Nick, you're doing this just to hurt me. Lauren just smirked, locked her phone, and stretched luxuriously. He'll figure it out. I laughed. Yeah, he will. And then we walked out of the airport, into paradise, leaving them behind in the wreckage they created. I never imagined I'd be the guy telling a story like this. You hear about it happening to other people. Some poor soul walking in on their spouse, tangled up with someone else, their entire world shattering in an instant. But that kind of thing doesn't happen to you, right? Until it does. The man in my bed wasn't just any man. He was my best friend. My name is Jake, and for 6 years, I thought I had a solid marriage with my wife Olivia. We had our traditions, date nights, weekend getaways, inside jokes. Sure, the spark had dimmed over time, but that was normal, wasn't it? I never imagined she'd betray me. And Nick? He wasn't just a friend, he was family. We had been inseparable since college. I was the best man at his wedding. Hell, I even helped him pick out an engagement ring for his fiancée Lauren. So when I came home early from work that day, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I had a half-day off and wanted to surprise Olivia with lunch. Sushi from her favorite spot, a small, thoughtful gesture. I parked in the driveway, walked in with a smile on my face, and stepped inside. The smile didn't last long. At first, it was just a sound, low voices coming from upstairs, then laughter. Olivia's laughter. My grip tightened around the takeout bag. Something felt off. My gut screamed at me, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was on the phone. Maybe she had the TV on. Then I heard his voice. Nick's. The world tilted on its axis. Moving like a man outside of his own body, I climbed the stairs one slow step at a time, heart pounding in my ears. The bedroom door was slightly open. I didn't have to push it. I saw everything. Olivia and Nick, tangled together in the sheets, their bodies intertwined in a way that left no room for doubt. For a brief moment, my mind refused to accept reality. It felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart, some tragic movie playing out before me. But this wasn't fiction. This was my life. And I was the fool standing in the doorway, watching his wife betray him with the man he once considered a brother. Nick was the first to notice me. His face drained of color, his mouth opening as if to stammer out an excuse or an apology. Olivia gasped, scrambling to cover herself with the sheets. But I didn't wait for an explanation. I didn't need one. I turned around and walked out. They called after me, their voices frantic, but I was already gone. Sliding into my car, I tossed the sushi onto the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anger. Humiliation. Betrayal. It all twisted together, forming something dark and cold inside me. I could have stormed back in, could have screamed, could have swung a fist at Nick's face. But no. They didn't deserve my rage. They deserved something worse. I drove for hours, the cityscape blurring past me, my mind racing through the possibilities. Going back to that house wasn't an option. Not when I was this furious. If I called them, I'd hear their pathetic justifications, their empty apologies. And I wasn't interested in either.
Then it hit me. Lauren. Nick's fiancée.
The woman who had no idea that the man she was supposed to marry in 3 months was rolling around in my bed with my wife. Reaching for my phone, I found her number and hesitated. Was this the right move? Then I remembered the way Olivia had laughed in my bed, the way Nick had looked at me, guilty but not sorry.
I pressed call.
She answered on the second ring.
Hey Jake. What's up? Straight to the point. We need to talk, I said. It's about Nick. A pause.
Then warily, what about him? Meet me at the Oak Room in an hour.
She didn't ask questions. Just said, okay?
That told me everything I needed to know. Some part of her already suspected. When she walked into the restaurant, she looked tense, bracing herself for bad news. I hated being the one to confirm her worst fears, but she deserved the truth. So I told her everything. At first, she just sat there, silent, hands clenched into fists on the table. Then, her eyes glistened. You're sure? She whispered. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. The pictures I had taken before I walked out, proof. Nick and Olivia, too wrapped up in their betrayal to even notice me capturing their downfall. Lauren stared at them, her breathing shaky. Then, something unexpected happened. She didn't break down. She didn't sob. Her lips curled into a snarl. That bastard, she muttered, wiping her eyes. And that lying witch. She looked up at me, fire in her gaze. What are you going to do? I smirked. I was hoping you'd help me. Her brow arched. Help you how? I leaned forward. Nick's been bragging for months about taking you to that luxury resort in Aruba for your engagement trip, right? She nodded, cautious. Well, I said, how would you like to still go, just with me instead? For a moment, she just stared. Then, slowly, a wicked smile spread across her face. I like the way you think, Jake. And just like that, the plan was set in motion. Nick had already booked the entire trip, a 5-star beachfront resort, private villa, the full VIP treatment. Since Lauren's name was on the reservation, she had full control. All I have to do is swap his name for yours, she said, smirking as she scrolled through the booking details. Poetic, isn't it? I grinned. Very. 10 minutes later, the reservation was officially changed. Nick was out. I was in. But we weren't stopping there. Lauren turned to me, eyes glinting with mischief. How do you feel about making this very public? I already knew what she meant. You mean rubbing it in their faces? Exactly. She leaned back, arms crossed. They snuck around, lied, betrayed us. I say we do the opposite. Flaunt it. Make it look like we're living the dream while they scramble to keep their dirty secret under wraps. I chuckled. Lauren, I think I like your style. She smirked. Then pack your bags, Jake. We leave in 3 days. The morning of our flight, my phone buzzed with desperate messages from Olivia and Nick. Apologies, excuses, pathetic attempts at damage control. I ignored them. Instead, I grabbed my suitcase, turned off my phone, and met Lauren at the airport. You ready? She asked, adjusting her sunglasses. I smirked. Oh, I've never been more ready in my life. First-class seats. Champagne. A week in paradise. And a revenge story neither of them would ever forget.